Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Poza from the Pennsylvania Key is the host of the program and is with us throughout the series. Well, good morning, John, and who do we have on the show this morning?
Good morning, Joe. We have the second in our series on the topic of early intervention, and I'd like to welcome Susan Zeider, who is a consultant and project manager with the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network and Early Intervention Technical Assistance. She's a board-certified behavior analyst and focuses largely on the areas of behavior and autism, and she is the project manager for Pennsylvania's Early Childhood Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports Initiative. Welcome to the program, Susan.
Well, thank you, and I'm very pleased to be with you this morning.
So happy to have you. You know, this is the second in three programs we're doing on the subject of early intervention. We did a show with Kurt Kondrich, and Kurt is obviously one of our leading advocacy people across the state, talking about early intervention and how important it is. And I wanted to have someone from the state level, and then, you know, our next program in another 2 weeks, we're going to have someone who's actually a practicing person in the field that actually is a early intervention person working in a school district. So tell us, for listeners who may not be as aware, tell us basically about early intervention as a whole and how parents and family members, it is so important to know the services are out there if they have a child or know of a child that maybe could use some help in their early years.
So early intervention is one of the few early childhood services that is absolutely must be available to you if your child is eligible. And every county in Pennsylvania has services available from birth up until children enter kindergarten that are part of the early intervention system. There is a Connect phone line that will help families get connected to the right person, and I'm going to circle back to that in a minute and give you that actual number if you would like it.
Sure.
Ask me another question in the meantime.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, for instance, you know, early intervention from the standpoint of our perspective in quality early learning in this show, we've had guests on who work, for instance, in a preschool early intervention classroom, and they're working with children that may have developmental delays, and so, you know, teachers work with them specifically because the importance is that these children, many of them have delays that can be corrected if they're addressed early to make them, by the time they're ready to reach kindergarten, they can adapt and are basically on target. So that's kind of what I wanted to tell folks about, you know, if they have a concern with a child that happens to be preschool age, you know, and maybe want to know more information or basically have someone work with their child, what can they do? What's the first step?
Okay, and the first step is to use this phone number that I'm going to give you right now.
Okay.
The number is 1-800-692-7288. We call that the Connect Helpline, and by calling that number, a reception person will ask some questions about the child's age, some of the family's concerns, and then they will connect them to the appropriate, if it's an infant, toddler up to the age of 3, it'll be a county-level program, or if it is a preschooler from ages 3 up until they enter school, it will be, in most cases, an intermediate unit, but it also might be a school district or an agency. The folks who provide that services vary a little bit across the state. And because of those little bit of unusual pieces, that's why that connect line is important. It saves families from having to search for, well, they don't have to figure out who would serve them. The Connect folks will do that for them.
From a parent's point of view or family point of view, what types of behavior in young children in their preschool years and the ages you mentioned would indicate a need for early intervention and a need to make that first call?
Actually, one of the resources that would be really helpful for families is to, if they have access to the Internet, is to access the Guiding Parents Smoothly, or GPS for Parents. Mm-hmm. They have some excellent checklists for development that will help you identify how old, what should my child be able to do at the age that they are now. And because that is a constantly moving target as children get older and learn new skills and gain in development.
Yeah, we've talked about that previously on the show. It's www.gps. I believe it's org, correct? It's either org or com, but it's GPS stands for Guiding Parents Smoothly. But it's just as you said, it's a quick and easy way for parents to basically, and it's an interactive thing as well. There's an app for it that's free. And it's just as you said, it's a developmental checklist type of thing to monitor in typical types of behaviors based on that are age appropriate for the child, depending upon how old they are, to whether they are developing appropriately. But again, the number, as Susan mentioned, to first contact to see to go through this process, it's a Connect helpline. It's 1-800-692-7288. If you have a concern or want more information regarding possible early intervention services for your young child. Susan, one of the things that's really come of light, and you're especially close to this, is it's called Pennsylvania's Early Childhood Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports Initiative. The acronym we refer to it for those of us close to it is PBIS. Mm-hmm. You are the project manager for that. Tell us a little bit about that and how it works and some of the results that you found.
So this is a national effort, really, to refocus adults' attention on what are the behaviors that we want children to learn and be able to do, rather than what do we want to stop.
Right.
And in Pennsylvania, we have a network that we call the PAPBS network that actually stretches from birth through high school. And the portion of it that I am most involved with is that range that covers from birth up until children enter kindergarten. The piece that many people miss about program-wide positive behavior supports is that program-wide piece. This isn't just about what do I do with a child who bites, hits, kicks, whatever. It's really about how, as a system, does my program support the staff so that they know what to do and how to do it and how to get help if they need it? How does the program use data to look at what they're doing and whether it's working the way they wanted it to, or how they might guess, how they might figure out what they could do differently if things aren't working the way they want to? And, of course, it also includes some of those practices about how do I support a child who finds this task really hard and then may kind of fall apart into temper tantrum.
Right.
How can I support them ahead of time and prevent that happening in the first place? It also has a really strong focus on having clear expectations that apply to everyone that's involved with the program, not just the children, but also the adults that are working in the program and the the adults who are family members who are interacting with the program. An example would be most programs have usually 3 to 5 expectations, and typically there's one about how we keep ourselves safe, ourselves and others.
Right.
There's usually one something about how do we take care of the stuff. How do we take care of ourselves? How do we take care of our stuff? And how do we take care of each other? Those kind of, so it might be safe, be respectful, be responsible. It might be safe, be a team player, be helpful. You know, any of those kinds of things might be what the program talks about first, and then they translate that on it in order to put that into practice. They'll walk through really teaching, so what would that look like at arrival time? And what does that look like when mom is picking you up? And what does that look like when it's circle time? And so that they can teach the explicit behaviors that will help children know what teachers and parents expect of them.
And so that's really, it's a tool that is a multi-purpose tool, actually. So it helps those who are working in childcare, the teachers and preschool, the teachers, in working with the children and what the expectations are. So they are better prepared and they know what best practices are. But the important component also there is also that the parents also recognize this and are part of that practice and puzzle. So often we have guests on, we discuss, which is always a challenge, is knowing the appropriate things that we work on, that the child care practitioners do when the child is actually in child care or preschool. But so often is the case, the parents do not follow through in some of those same practices once that child leaves and goes home for the evening and is home for the weekend. What's the part of PBIS that involves, make sure that the parents are part of that practice and that initiative to follow through on those best practices with that child?
That's one of the things I love best about this whole process.
Right.
As you said, this is not a curriculum. This is a framework. This
right.
is a way for looking at your work in a way that helps you recognize what's working and what isn't. But there is a document that we use to guide the work of a program as they're engaging in program-wide positive behavior support called the Benchmarks of Quality.
Right.
And one of those critical elements under that for which there are specific benchmarks is related to family engagement. So there is that expectation that from the beginning, parents will be involved in helping to decide what the program-wide expectations will be. And there is a strong expectation that the staff will help families think about, just as the staff are thinking about, so what does be safe look like on the classroom playground? They're also engaging parents in thinking about what would that look like at your house and at different times of the day or in different locations, so that they're not, and it's not about how do you fix this child who is misbehaving. It's about, we're all thinking about how do we teach our children and sometimes ourselves about how do we really get the things that we want in ways that are helpful and supportive for ourselves and for others.
Right. We're speaking with Susan Zeiders, who is a consultant and project manager with the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network and Early Intervention Technical Assistance. Specifically now we're talking about positive behavior interventions and supports. Susan, what is the research and the data showing us about how effective the use of this framework is having?
Well, I will be quite honest that most of the more formal research has been done at school age than in early childhood, but there is more and more work being done on this. Some of the specific pieces of research have come out about, for instance, one of the expectations, the critical elements, is how we support staff to learn to implement these pieces and the importance of including coaching in that. So if you access the Pyramid Model Consortium, which is
right.
www.pyramidmodel.org, they have some pieces of research that have been done about the impact of coaching to fidelity and what a difference that makes in teacher skills and therefore child abilities. We haven't done a formal study, but we have had several of our programs in Pennsylvania compare their child outcomes on an informal basis with where they were prior to implementing program-wide positive behavior support, and they are reporting, and again, this is anecdotal,
right,
that by and large, children are doing better academically than they were before they engaged in this process. And the most logical reason for that, I love something that George Sugai, who works a lot with school age, said. He said, because they've done a lot of research about that at school age, and he said positive behavior support does not teach children to read, or in the case of early childhood, it might be to follow directions or to count to 10 or whatever, but it makes it more possible for teachers to teach children to read or count or make a friend, etc.
Right. And just so that our listeners are aware, we started off the program talking about early intervention in general, but as we shifted to the PBIS framework, just to make them aware that using this framework is not necessarily, this is with all children. This is this is with children that maybe early intervention is not is not something that's required, but concerning behavioral issues that the kids are often kids, and sometimes there's inappropriate behaviors that are corrected, and it's not saying these are all bad kids. It's for all kids, and that's the point I think I wanted to make clear, and you maybe can expound on that with this framework.
Absolutely. So in Pennsylvania, we have first of all, two things I want to do. One is to repeat again about the PAPBS network.
Right.
So the wonderful piece about that is that because it is a birth through high school system, we're building that continuity and shared goals, and we work very closely with the school-age folks to do this. Both in early childhood and in school age, the majority of buildings and classrooms that are engaged in this process are not specifically early intervention or special ed. They include those types of classrooms, but the large majority of them are child care, Head Start, pre-K counts, all of those kinds of preschool programs that, sort of a child care center, but also nursery schools.
Right.
We have a family child care center that's actually been recognized for fidelity. So the majority are early childhood programs. Interestingly, though, we know what a big topic inclusion of children with disabilities is in Pennsylvania and nationally, and we have found that the large majority of the programs that are supporting children are actually also serving children with disabilities, even though they are not specifically early intervention programs. And 73% last year, 73% of the classrooms for which we have data served at least one child with disabilities.
Right.
So it's both. It is a support for children who have challenges, but it's really a support for everyone. And the longer I do this, the more adamant I am about this helps kids, but it's really about the grown-ups. What we are really doing is supporting staff and families so that they are able to better support their children.
If I can step in and try to do a grandparent-y kind of a question here, a parent kind of question, and maybe simplify things for our listeners, am I right in assuming this is not about reprimanding negative behavior? It's about defining positive behavior and rewarding positive behavior. Have I done it in a fairly coherent nutshell?
Yes.
Okay.
Which some people say, what, are you telling me I can never tell a child no? And no, we are not saying that. But what we are saying is whatever you pay the most attention to is what you will see the most of. So we're really trying to change the adult behavior and help them focus more on the behaviors that they want to see.
Right. And one of the things that you brought out, Susan, that I think is so critical that we often forget is that you brought up the fact that concerning a child with a disability and working with that child in a classroom with other children who may be behaviorally or may be in terms of their development on target, is how important it is for those kids working together and supporting one another, as well as the child that maybe has that disability. And oftentimes, you probably can chime in on this, as the research shows that child actually does better when they have that support network with other children who may not be the same.
Absolutely, and it goes well both ways. It also helps us to learn. It helps the adults be more thoughtful about how do we teach this so that all children can learn, and it helps the peers be more thoughtful about how can my friend play with me too, and it helps the child with the disability to have role models who are maybe a little more skilled in certain areas than they are, and also to be able to be the leader with some other kids in the areas where they are more skilled. Right.
Where can teachers, whether it's early childhood or school age, and parents find more information on PBIS? Is there a website, or is there some kind of resource that they can go to immediately to get that information, to learn more about it?
Some of the most family-friendly Pennsylvania-specific things you might be found on the EITA portal, and that's probably the easiest way for someone to find it, would be to just put into your search engine EITA space PORTAL. It will pop up, and then if you go to the topics of interest and behavior, on the family page, there is an online tool that actually walks families through what the elements are of PBIS. The name of that, I'm pulling it up right now so that I can give it to you exactly. So on the social emotional page, things are organized under social emotional resources for families, social emotional resources for center-based programs, and social emotional resources for home-based programs. Under families, if you scroll down to positive behaviors linked to learning, that's actually was created by one of the intermediate units in our state that took the materials from the Center for Social Emotional Foundations for Early Learning and created this very accessible webinar, essentially, for families. If you go back to the social emotional resources for center-based programs, under supporting an effective workforce, there is we have a document here called, I'm sure it's exactly accurate, Getting Started with Program-Wide Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports through the PA-PBS Network. That will tell you more information about whether or not, some specific things about the website. We also, on that same EITA portal, if you looked under professional development, there is down at the bottom under social emotional, there is a document called the PBIS Administrator Overview. These are all free. You can just access them, wander through them. There are additional resources there, but if you play a little bit on that website, you would find some more resources for PBIS. The Administrator Overview.
I was going to say, thanks, Susan. Our time has run down, but I want to thank you for this great information and resources, and I wanted to thank you for being on the program today. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
And that's our program for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at this same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. For John Posa and the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.